Hello, everyone. I'm excited to come to you with another message today. I have opened up the space, and right before I hit record, I asked them what's the message you want to deliver through me today? And the big word they had was abundance. And it was just like sprawled out over an image of like the sea. Um, and then under it, they have like ease and flow. Um, and they're asking me to share also like my journey of like, are we really going to talk about abundance right now? Like everything in the world is a little haywire. My hair looks out of place. I'm trying to fix it. Right. So like there are these moments. Like there are these moments where we want like as a channel, like I want to deliver something else to you. And they're like, yeah, no, like we want to talk about this. And so just to tell you, like it happens to the best of us. I'm also feeling a little under the weather, which might also be contributing to this, but I also believe that um usually when I'm like in a different place, like physically, it allows messages to come through differently. So sometimes I'm more open to certain messages because I'm not like so on, right? And so let's see how it goes today as we talk about abundance. Let me see what they want to share. They keep repeating the word and then they have like someone dancing around the word abundance. They're communicating too that like it feels very contradictory to say like let's talk about abundance in the context of chaos. Let's talk about abundance in the context of other things that we should be talking about. And they're saying, but abundance is also all those things, and that what equips us to be able to move through the world in the way that we would like, a part of it is being abundantly resourced in order to change the world in the way we most desire for it to be changed in some way in order to contribute to it. Um, they're saying like that's a given. And when we assume that it always has to be like so serious and specific and um they're saying like the constriction of keeping something under wraps. Like they're showing me like the keeping and the holding of things within is like the opposite energy of what actually creates change in the world. It's not the idea that we remove the emotions of happiness and joy. It's that we anchor further into them to determine like what is our medicine in this time. Um, yeah, usually they don't have me pull cards, but they keep showing me images of cards from this deck called the Loteria Remedios, um, Oracle, Soulful Remedies and Affirmations from Mexican Loteria. So Mexican Loteria, from what I've read in the book, because I'm not Chicana or Mexican American, is a game. I think it's like a matching game. And the cards are all like symbols of different things, from like objects to people to um yeah, uh to food. And that's what they want to do is they want to go into this conversation about abundance through a set of cards where everything is very symbolic and full of joy because it's a game. Um and they're like it's a fun game. And in the book, she describes the game as like people have certain lucky like objects or certain lucky cards. Um, and that they're all their own. And they're like, what if abundance was just like a game that you got to play to figure out at what frequency level do you need to match in order to create the level of abundance that you want in the world, whether that's like a more socially just world, whether that's something specific to your family. They're saying whether that's something in regards to creative project and the way that you want to contribute to it, that there's something in here about looking at, they're like in a very playful, like light way. Um, yeah, because they're saying like looking at it the other way becomes very heavy, and that means you then take it on, and that means you're then like fight. They're saying like were for those of you who are here, I'm assuming you're here because you're an active resistance to kind of greater ideas in in our particular society. And so like when you're sitting there at resistance to it, you're exhausting your physical body. But if you want to, right, be in connection to and relationship to something that you want to change, how do you change your stance so it's not just resistance, but it comes from a place of great, they're saying like great abundance of what you have to share so that you feel as though you're contributing to that movement or to that change and to the vision of the world as you see it and you want to see it. Um, so yeah, they're telling me to shuffle the cards and see what comes up. They said some of these objects will mean something to some of you. Some of them will mean nothing, and we'll see what messages come through every card. And they're saying there's gonna be like two or three cards, and one card I'll read maybe from the book. They're like, maybe from the book. We'll see. Um, all right. So the first card is a watermelon. And in Spanish, it's la sandía. And I bet you I said that wrong because I've actually never said the word watermelon in Spanish. And there's an accent on the I. Um, hmm. Yeah, the moment I like saw the card, I just like felt like a level of sweetness, right? Because it's fruit, right? So they're and what I love about this fruit, because there's other cards in this deck of fruit, and sometimes it's eaten into. But in this one, I was like, oh, it's cut. It's not yet been. They say devoured, not yet been tasted. And if you look at it, it's sort of still connected to the root of the ground as like a fruit, right? Like it's not just a piece on a plate, right? And then the connection of the fruit in this photo is the sun. So they're having me point all these things out because it could just be a piece of watermelon, but they're actually asking you to get really, they're saying get clear and more kind with yourself as you consider like, what is your, um, definition, understanding of abundance and where are its roots? Like, where does it come from? Because that will determine how much it grows, how much sun it gets, and whether or not it gets enough sun, right? So they're sharing that when we think about and consider our notions of abundance, if abundance were symbolized as a piece of fruit, then how was that fruit tended to? How was it cared for? And then how are you going to enjoy it? Because this has not yet been enjoyed or devoured in any way. It's just there. And so they're saying like take a look around you and notice what are the things around you that are proof of the abundance you already hold. And they're saying like on your in your physical body, in the physical world around you, your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, spiritual well-being. They're like, can you slow down and consider those and then do the excavation work of like, do you acknowledge those as proof of your abundance, or is this something you have to do now that it's being called forward as you're watching this video, right? So it's El Catrín, the gentleman. And the first thing I saw was him smelling a rose. I was like, oh, he's like taking a moment and he's enjoying it, right? Because that's the beauty of what they're saying. Like, that's the beauty of abundance. It's like meant to actually be enjoyed in the moment, not just to have. Right. So if you do acknowledge, like they're like from the previous card, if you acknowledge these certain things in your life represent a certain level of abundance that you have, like are you stopping to enjoy them? Right. Because it's different to say, I'm really grateful. They're like, you're really grateful you can breathe. But when do you take a moment to breathe? And not, they're saying not just to calm down, but to also see um, what that sense like how it helps you connect to the world around you. So like what is it that you're smelling? And have you stopped to be grateful for that? Like they're saying like it's like a web. So once you stop to be grateful of one thing, how much further can you go and go and go and go and go? Right? Because if I say I'm like grateful for my writing practice, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so grateful for this paper that I get to write on, but I'm also really grateful for the people who source the paper because they do it in this way. And then I'm like, oh God, I'm so grateful for trees because that's where paper comes from. And then I'm grateful for the way that they let me breathe because of what they have to offer me, right? And then you could go on and on. They're like, allow yourself to go on and on, right? Into the levels of depth um of what you're grateful for and knowing that that's evidence of great abundance, right? That they're saying like there's something in the world where abundance is often correlated to like things always being um like great, consistent. If something stays the same, it's wonderful. If we make a lot of money, that's our notion of abundance. Or like some of you think like having access to a lot of knowledge is abundance, right? Like so like the question is like, are those actual true forms of abundance for you? And if they are, could you help yourself like get deeper into like what are because they're saying like once you acknowledge the web of abundance around you, like literally that energy is like infectious. So for those of you who are sitting wondering when will I get the next thing, and it's like, why don't you just like sit there and like acknowledge every level of abundance? Um, because gathering that level of energy will attract more things that will make you feel abundant because you know what it is that makes your life feel like it's something that's sort of like bounteous, right? Bounteous. Last card. Oh, el pescado. I love this. The fish. The reason I said I love this is because it's the water. So, in the first card we have Earth. We have the fruit that comes from the earth, and then we have the sort of cosmos from like the sun. And then we have like presence. And so it's like the sun, earth, and then we have like presence here in our sense of the real physical realm. And our connection to the earth is even there as he smells the rose. And then there's the water. Like it's just like they're just like jumping you in. They're like once you can acknowledge the web of abundance that you exist within, then like you just get to swim in it all the time. But you have to actively slow down and figure out like how will you remind yourself of that level of abundance that you sort of live in, right? Because in this photo, if you look, there's like a little white line, and that's supposed to like catch the fish, right? So when that happens, right, the fish dies, right? Slash it goes on to its next purpose or function, right? Because people eat it and then they're able to enjoy it, right? And they're saying like sometimes when you're in the water, you forget you're in the water. You're like the fish. You just, water is air. It is what it is, and you forget how much bounty is around you. And that sometimes when you're not paying attention to all that, you can get caught up, right? And they're like, it's okay if that happens because that's inevitable. We walk in this world and there's like a lot of different energies and there are different people with different senses and ways of being that may or may not be in alignment with any notions of abundance that you have. And so then it's your job to like sort of untie yourself from whatever that is that they've like got you all grappled in. They're like, mm-mm-mm. Like unravel yourself in some emotional way so that you can return to the bounty of abundance that's always around you. Let's see if they have any other. They want to talk about the question of ease and flow as it relates to abundance. And they're trying to lead me to another oracle card deck. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna, this is the one. Hmm. Yeah, I think this is it. Sorry, I was like Trying to get a sense of which one I'll do. This is your Work Your Light Oracle card from Rebecca Campbell. Um, and they're saying we're just gonna pick two cards. We're just gonna consider. Usually I shuffle all the cards before I get on here, but today I was just supposed to like do the verbal message, not get into an oracle card reading. But you know, they're bringing me where we need to go for me to give you the message you're meant to hear today. So I usually don't like to shuffle on camera because I'm like, it's, it's not a sound I love to hear, but that might just be me. Oh, okay. Hmm. All right. So, in regards to ease and flow and abundance, uh-oh, priesthood, sisterhood. I was gonna say priestesshood. Sisterhood of the Rose, beauty and devotion, priestess, mystic, teacher. They're saying those of you who are here are like leaders because that's who I attract, people who lead other people because they're amazing at what they do. Um, and they're saying like your key to abundance is like walking and trusting that you're meant to lead in the way you are supposed to. They're like, without comparison, without like it hasn't gotten right, I haven't gotten it right, I haven't figured it out, all that stuff. They're like, what if you were part of a lineage of leaders and you were reminded of that? They're saying like ancestral, spiritual lineage, right? And so what you're here to do is what you're here to do, and nobody else can really do what you're doing. And even if they can do, they're reminding me to tell you, because sometimes our minds are like, everybody could do certain things. It's like, yeah, but they can't do it the way that you can do it, and they can't hold it at the frequency that you do for the people that are meant to hear it from you. Right. So they're like they're telling me to tell you, like on YouTube, there's like millions of us who do these readings, right? But some of you stick around to some of these channels more than others, right? There's something about our approach, there's something about the way the message resonates, about the way I communicate, right? And all of that is like a level of energetic frequency, right? And they're like, there's a way in which you do what you do at the frequency that you do it, that no one else can do it. And you need to accept it, walk in that, and know that you're going to make a bunch of mistakes because that's what makes you a good leader. Right? They're like, good leaders don't get made just because they're wonderful and they never make mistakes. Like those are like people-pleasing leaders, and people don't love those people. They actually don't always respect them either because they just never know where they stand with them. Right? So they're asking you to get real about like, oh, what if I just agreed that like the point of me being the leader is that I get to learn, and then I get to lead others through my learning. And they're saying, and then you get to continue to learn because that's the beauty of leadership, right? When you are in a position of leadership, whatever that is, because some of you, they're saying like leadership is like within your family unit. Some of you, it's like leadership within your work. Some of you, it's like leadership within like business or spirituality, right? And they're saying, the point is that if you're a leader, you're always going to be learning. And they're like, if you are here, you're like a leader to change leaders to change like your particular field. Like they're here to change the game of whatever they do. Right. So if you're a therapist and you focus on this, and like that's the game that you're here to change. If you're a healer, right? Or if you're just a writer, and that's also a way to lead, right? Or just a mystic, right? So they're they're saying we want to remind you through me that what if the path of being a leader is always one of learning? Because that's what makes you the best leader ever. Because otherwise, you have nothing to stand on, sort of. Right? Like, why do you get to lead if you have nothing you've learned? Like, why would people follow you? And sometimes they're like, sometimes that learning is here in the physical realm, and sometimes that learning is like, um, is in lifetimes before that you get to tap into and figure out how that works right now, right? Um, Wow, that like my body usually has other things to say whenever I'm channeling, and this time it was like a digestive response. So clearly that was important for somebody. I needed to pause there. Um, and so this is why they're saying like Sisterhood of the Rose. Yeah. Hmm. That's what they want to communicate through this card. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Oh. So they're saying like once you get into and you trust that you're meant to be the leader and you start moving like the leader that you are, you will get into a rhythm of what your learning pace is and what it is you're learning when you're learning and when you're ready to give it away. But until you allow yourself to get started and go through it and move through it, you're never going to gain enough sense of like a familiarity, momentum, and a rhythm to get a sense of how what you learn is then supposed to be given away from you to whoever it is you're leading. So if you're questioning it, they're like, stop, like they're like, they showed me this image and they gave me a sound. They're like, it's like a car that just won't start. But it won't start because they just won't hit the key long enough for it to hit start. It's like they're just going a little bit and then they're stopping. There's something wrong with the car, is what they're showing me in a visual. The problem is with the person who's attempting to drive the car. They're like not holding it long enough because they're like, what do I do when it's like in motion? And they're like, this is what they're showing me. Like, and then my heart is like so stressed and my nervous system is dysregulated because I'm like, oh my God, I'm sort of starting, but I don't know. And I'm sort of starting. And it's like this level of anxiety. And they're saying like, at some point you just got to turn it on and you got to deal with the stress of having it on. But you can't do that until you just decide that this is the path and that you stop. They're saying, like, stop trying to fit in and not be a leader when people are constantly calling to you and you're being given these opportunities and you're just like, no, 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 no. And it's like, well, then, and then they're showing me someone who's like saying all this no, but then they're dissatisfied. You're saying no, but you're not actually responding to the call. And then you wonder why you're dissatisfied. It's because you're not responding to the call. And they're saying at some point you got to answer one call. Even if many of them don't feel right, like at some point you got to move something. You got to shift something by doing something, right? Even if it doesn't feel like the most ideal way in which you imagined you would be leading. They're saying you got to do it though. Like you got to move it. You got to get to it because when the moment you say yes and the moment you answer the call, that's the sign to the divine and to you that like you're ready for the actual thing you're meant to lead. But you can't just sit here and they're like, wait, and sort of started and fake started and think that like it's going to be a-okay because otherwise the path to abundance becomes one that is like you dragging this car that you just refuse to turn on. Meanwhile, it works just fine, right? Okay, they're saying that's enough. Unbound is the second card. Oof. Releasing soul patterns, contracts, and past lives. Hmm. They're reminding you that on a human level, sometimes when we hear soul contracts and we hear all that stuff, it feels very like vague, very nebulous. Like, does that mean? And like all that stuff, right? So I'm gonna bring it back to real life in a second, just so you could see like soul contracts aren't just from like, other lifetimes. That is part of it for sure, right? But I think sometimes when we're like sitting here, like, what do you mean? Like, what is the contract and all that stuff? Like, it could be as simple as the contract is like nobody in my family went to college. I went to college. I got several degrees. That's a contract that's been broken. My access to abundance is different than theirs because I did this. Not because I get paid because I have a degree, but because I gave myself access to a different experience that then opened the portal in the family so that then abundance could enter in a different way. So that's what they mean. They're like, they're not sitting, they want you to sort of like stay away from like, oh my God, I need to know my past life. It's like, with and they're like, right now already what contracts you're breaking in your own family unit at work in the ways that you work, right? Like, because they're like, even like, they're like, show them an example from work. So like, you know, I'm a teacher of writing. I very much struggle with the grading component because I just don't think it's fair as it relates to writing because writing is a skill that has to be developed. So I don't think it's fair that I have to sit here and grade people and people only get A's if they like give me perfect writing. I mean, like that's the philosophy of the field sometimes, right? And that has always felt wrong to me for like the entire time I was a student and a faculty member. So what did I do? What was the contract? The contract of the university is that I show up, I grade according to what's expected, what's been done. And then I'm like, but I know there's other people that sort of do this differently. So then I opened myself up. I took a class. I read some stuff, changed things to create a different kind of grading system. They still have to get A, B, C, D, or F, right? But the way in which they get there is different in my course. And that's a contract that I feel like I have broken being in contact with the academic institution, right? And so they're having you consider like there are contracts in real life right now that you're tethered to that you're already breaking. And that's why it feels like your life is super hard. And when you're in resistance to something, and you're like sitting there and fighting, and you're like, you're most likely fighting because you're in this contract with it, right? And so they're saying, like, right now, to create more ease and flow, you need to be willing to acknowledge what they're saying. Like, you have to be willing to acknowledge the contract that's kept you from gathering the abundance that you're meant to have. And they're saying for some of you, that contract is, oh, you're going to do this kind of spiritual work. Like, that's not within the church. That's not within this faith. That's not within whatever, right? So, like, that's the contract that you're actively trying to break, right? For some of you, the contract is different, but you have to acknowledge what the contract is, begin to see the ways in which they're saying, like, you don't understand, but the way in which you've chosen to break that contract is your access to abundance, but you're not aware of it yet. And the level of awareness that you bring to it is what's going to literally open, they're saying, like, literally open the door to abundance, but you have to become aware of the contract that you're breaking. Right. So they're also showing me like there could be a family connection, the way the family dynamic works and the way that you might be expected to show up as a certain family member, right? Like I'm the oldest daughter. There are certain things, right? And the sole contract was that I'm supposed to behave in these ways. I'm supposed to end up, married with children, right? Like there are all these expectations. And my contract, I could feel it my entire life. My contract, like I wasn't having that contract. I just wasn't having it. If you look at everything I studied, everything having to do with feminism, like literally, right? But they're saying the journey to opening the door to abundance is gathering the level of self-awareness that allows you to see the contract that you've already broken. You don't have to keep fighting up against it because you already decided and took a different path and decided to act a different way. Like there's like you already decided, right? And so because you already decided, you're already unbound. You're no longer holding yourself to the terms of that contract. But now you need to acknowledge it on like a physical realm, right? So you could say, yeah, F yeah, I came here to do this and I'm doing it and it's done. And when you acknowledge that, they're saying like you can acknowledge that through ceremony, you can acknowledge it in prayer, you can acknowledge it through a ritual, or you could just say, oh, damn, I did that and write it. And that they're saying like that activates, triggers like abundance in a different way because there's a level of awareness that you have that wasn't there before. All right. Last card. Ooh, boundaries. Where do you need to establish better boundaries? Yeah, all I saw when I saw the card was like all the hands, like all of them want you, right? And they're reminding you, like, yeah, you're an amazing freaking leader, right? People will want you. They're going to want your energy. They're going to want your time. They're going to want your attention because they know how much you can give them. And they're asking you to determine, well, which hands are most important at what time. It doesn't mean you say no to everybody, but it does mean that you need to get real with like, what are you going to do? Right? Like, who are you going to say yes to and when? Right? And they're showing me someone like you have to give boundaries at work. Like you have to say, I'm done at this time. I'm not responding. They're saying like some of you for family need to be like, no, you need to give me 24 hours to respond to these messages. Like I need a moment. I work 12-hour days, right? Like you just need to communicate that, right? They're saying some of you, the boundaries, like with the work that you do and the work that you love, like it can't be all encompassing. You may love it because you're a leader, but there has to be a moment in which you stop to rest so you can keep doing the work. They're saying there's one more card I'm supposed to read from. Oh, there it goes. The initiation, rite of passage, crossing the threshold. Oh my goodness. Let's see where it is. So I'm going to read this real quick, and they're asking you to consider how could you initiate yourself into a new relationship with abundance so that it's yours and your own? Like what came forward from the reading today that you might want to try? What is it inspired for you to consider? Some of the most sacred initiation chambers are temples, and temples look scary from the outside, but are breathtakingly beautiful on the inside. This represents the journey that the soul pilgrim is required to take to reach somewhere sacred, but only the initiated can enter. Perhaps that's where you are right now. You are being tested, initiated, because you are headed somewhere sacred. Initiations require that we cross the threshold from one world or state of being to the next. We are called to face what scares us and have to be willing to lose it all in order to gain a new way of being, of safety, of security, of depth, of meaning. Initiations, like rites of passage, mark the shift from one age to the next and can take place because of emotional turmoil, great loss, grief, or devastation. But it is through the seeming hardship that our heart cracks open and our spirit is invested to step forward. We take the sacred voyage into more of who we are and who we came here to be. It can be painful and scary, but once we begin the journey, we can be more ourselves than ever before. If you are in the middle of an initiation right now, you will get through it, and one day soon you will bless the thing that broke you down and cracked you open because the world needs you open. You are going somewhere sacred. It will be worth it, and you're closer than you think. Rite of passage, cross the threshold. So they're saying for some of you who are here, um, abundance is the threshold that you're being asked to enter through, and it's asking for you to release and let things go before you go through the threshold. And sometimes that's hard. And sometimes that's like all the time. I think that's hard. Um, and they're saying you don't have to do that alone. You have the support to consider what that means. They're also saying that it feels really scary because the things you're letting go are very much of this world. But if you allow yourself to get still enough to consider what it means to cross that threshold, that there are other things available to you than just what you seem to be thinking you're releasing from the physical realm. Because they're like saying some of you are like trying to release jobs, trying to release money, trying to release people, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? And it's like, once you cross the threshold, there's more over there. But you think because you're releasing all this, that there isn't anything over there on that side. But what if you just knew that there was? And all you needed was someone to sit there and be with you as you considered, like, what am I releasing so that I can open myself up to, so I can have more abundance in my life, right? And if you want someone to do that work with, I have a one-on-one program called Sacred Threshold. You're welcome to join me and receive that kind of support because I think that's part of what I do well. Like I just let people sit there in the muck of it. And I know that's the hardest part. People think that that's like the hardest, and it is. It's the hardest part to just sit there in the unknown and be like, don't I have to know where I go? I'm like, maybe sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you know the threshold is there, and sometimes you walk through it and you're still sitting there like, I don't know, and that's okay. Like as humans, we're not all knowing, but what we do have access to is our inner resource knowing, connection to the divine, to our guide, so that we can slowly begin to gather a level of, they're saying like resourcefulness and like connection that helps us see like what does come next. I think immediately some people are like, oh, I leave this job and I do this and I do this, or I leave this relationship. It's like this, like this, like this. And they're saying that's not how initiation works. That's not how sacred threshold works. It just isn't. You think it does because you want to go through it as fast as possible so that you can feel as little as possible. But they're saying like once you actually allow yourself to feel it, you'll notice you've made it up in your mind to be a lot more difficult than it might actually feel inside of you. One. And two, they're saying like you have a lot more resource than you're giving yourself credit for. And they're saying like resource within you. Like some of you underestimate how much you have within you. And so I hope that reading was supportive. Let me know in the comments what resonated for you. This was a little bit of a different kind of reading because I'm a little sickies. So I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next one.